Last week, we reported the bombshell news that Robert Wagner has been named a person of interest in the death of his wife, legendary actress Natalie Wood.
And I know people lose their tempers. I know bad things happen when you don't want them to. So stand up and tell me that. Tell me what happened to her.
They called her Hollywood's Golden Girl, the kind of actress whose name was carved into the industry long before she even learned how to spell it. A child star by age 4, a box office magnet by 16, and an icon by 25. She had fame, beauty, money, and what the tabloids called a storybook romance with movie star Robert Wagner. But behind the sparkle was something darker, much darker. And on a cold November night in 1981, that darkness caught up with her. Natalie would vanish from a yacht off Catalina Island. The official story? She slipped, fell, and drowned. But here's what they didn't tell you. Natalie was terrified of water, paralyzingly so. She never swam. She didn't even like being near the ocean after dark. So how did she end up alone, overboard, in the middle of the night? And why is the one man who was with her that night, her husband, refused to speak to investigators for over 40 years? Today, the Natalie Wood mystery is closer than ever to being solved. And the truth? It isn't looking good. The rise of Hollywood's Golden Girl. Natalie Wood was born in 1938 in San Francisco, the daughter of Russian immigrants who saw Hollywood as the promised land. Her mother, Maria, believed Natalie was destined for greatness and made sure of it. From an early age, Natalie was told to smile, to cry on command, to perform. Legend has it, Maria once tore the wings off a butterfly just to get Natalie to cry for a scene. At age 4, she landed her first film role. By 8, she was starring in Miracle on 34th Street, the movie that made her a national treasure. By her teens, she was headlining blockbusters, acting opposite James Dean in Rebel Without a Cause, a role that earned her an Oscar nomination at just 17. To the public, she was confident, composed, magnetic. But privately, Natalie was cracking under the pressure. She longed for normalcy. Behind the cameras, she wrestled with anxiety, control from her mother, and a desperate need to protect her image at any cost. And while the world saw a girl on top of the world, Natalie was quietly drowning. They called her Hollywood's Golden Girl. From the moment they left the harbor, something felt off. There were reports of tension on the boat, long silences, heavy drinking, and an argument that escalated as the night wore on. Christopher Walken, Natalie's co-star in her latest film, was there as a guest. But Wagner allegedly viewed him as a threat, jealous, some say, of their professional closeness and easy rapport. As the night unfolded, things became heated. At one point, Wagner reportedly smashed a wine bottle in anger, shouting at Walken about Natalie's career. He didn't like how much time she was spending away from home. He wanted her to slow down, to focus more on being a wife, a mother, not a movie star. That was the last night Natalie Wood was seen alive. Wagner later claimed he went to bed early, that he thought Natalie had gone off to sleep. But when he checked her room, she was gone. Her body was found hours later, floating face down in a flannel nightgown, socks, and a red jacket. The dinghy from a yacht was missing, and later found beached nearby. The official ruling? Accidental drowning. But nothing about that night ever truly added up. Natalie's sister, Lana Wood, has long questioned the story. So has Dennis Davern, the yacht's captain. According to Davern, Wagner knew Natalie was missing long before help was called. He claims Wagner told him not to turn on the searchlights, not to alert nearby boats, and not to contact the Coast Guard. A full 4 hours passed before a distress call went out. In cold water, time is everything, and Natalie had none of it. Even more chilling were the screams. A nearby boater, Marilyn Wayne, reported hearing a woman's voice calling for help, repeatedly, late that night. "Help me! Someone please help me! I'm drowning," the voice cried. Then, a man's voice replied calmly, "Okay, honey." And then, silence. Wayne was never called to testify. For years, her account was dismissed, but her story never changed, and neither did the bruises. When the autopsy report was released, it revealed fresh bruises on Natalie's arms, legs, and face. There were also abrasions on her cheeks and a small cut on her forehead. The toxicology report showed alcohol in her system, along with motion sickness pills and a mild painkiller. Combined, these substances could have made her drowsy, less coordinated, but they didn't explain the injuries. Forensic experts later concluded that some of the bruises may have occurred before she entered the water. In 2012, the cause of death was quietly amended from accidental drowning to drowning and other undetermined factors. It was a small change, but one with enormous implications. It meant the door was open officially for foul play. By 2018, Robert Wagner was named a person of interest in the case, but he never agreed to sit for questioning. To this day, he maintains that Natalie's death was a tragic accident. Her daughter, Natasha, continues to defend him, describing him as a devoted father who has been unfairly vilified. But the questions haven't gone away. Why did Wagner delay calling for help? Why would Natalie, who was so afraid of dark water, leave the yacht alone on a stormy night? And what really happened during those final hours aboard Splendor? Recently, new witnesses have stepped forward. One, a former deckhand who worked in the area, claims he overheard an argument that night, followed by a woman's voice shouting in fear. Another, revisiting Marilyn Wayne's old testimony, recalled how Natalie once confided, "Wagner is going to kill me." These accounts may not prove anything on their own, but piece by piece, a pattern is emerging. The more people looked into the case, the harder it became to believe the official version of events. Natalie's fear of dark water wasn't a passing anxiety. It was deeply rooted. Her mother once told her she would die by drowning, and Natalie believed it. She avoided swimming her entire life. Friends say she wouldn't even go near a pool unless absolutely necessary. So the idea that she voluntarily climbed into a dinghy at night while wearing a nightgown in bad weather simply didn't make sense. Even veteran investigators began to question it. And yet, no one was ever charged. No formal inquest, no trial, just questions and silence. For years, the case remained cold. Then came Lana Wood's book. In 2021, Natalie's sister released Little Sister, a memoir that reignited public interest in the mystery. In the book, Lana claimed that Natalie had confided in her about being assaulted at age 16 by a powerful man in Hollywood. That man, she revealed, was Kirk Douglas. Natalie had been taken to his hotel under the guise of a casting opportunity. What followed, according to Lana, was something Natalie never recovered from. Though Douglas was never charged with any wrongdoing and passed away before the book's release, the revelation added another painful layer to Natalie's story. It wasn't just a tragic accident at sea. It was a lifetime of silence, of being controlled, overlooked, and unheard. From manipulation of her early years to the pressure of fame and the toxic cycles in her relationships, Natalie Wood's life wasn't just glamorous. It was complicated and deeply human. The night she died, all of those complications seemed to collide. The rocky marriage, the jealousy, the public image that had to be protected at all costs. And maybe, just maybe, a decision was made to protect reputations instead of telling the truth. That's what many now believe. Not that there was a grand conspiracy, but that something terrible happened that night, and someone panicked. That the delay in calling for help wasn't a coincidence. That the bruises weren't accidental. And that the silence that followed wasn't out of grief, but fear. Some investigators and legal experts argue there's now enough evidence to convene a grand jury. Not to prosecute anyone, but to finally, under oath, hear the full truth. Witnesses could be compelled to testify. Timelines could be scrutinized. And long-held assumptions could be challenged. It may not change the outcome. Natalie Wood is gone. Nothing will bring her back, but it might finally bring clarity, or at least accountability, because no one simply disappears in the middle of the night without a trace of truth left behind, especially not someone like Natalie, a woman who gave everything to the screen while hiding so much behind it, a woman who wanted to be more than a movie star. She wanted to be heard, and for more than 4 decades, her voice has been drowned out by other people's versions of what happened. But now, her story is being told on her terms, through her sister, through the witnesses who never stopped speaking up, through the investigators still asking questions, and maybe at last, through a justice system willing to listen. Natalie Wood's death has never stopped haunting Hollywood, not just because of how she died, but because of what her life revealed about the industry she gave everything to. She wasn't just a movie star. She was a mirror, reflecting the glamour, the pressure, the silence, and the price women often pay to survive in the spotlight. For decades, Natalie's legacy was polished to perfection. She was remembered as radiant, talented, and elegant. The face on posters, the girl next door, the woman every director wanted in their film and every fan adored from afar. But those closest to her knew another version. A woman who, behind the studio-approved smile, was quietly unraveling, who often felt trapped in the very life that had made her famous. She had spent her childhood following her mother's orders, performing on command, always playing the part, both on and off screen. Later, as an adult, she would try to take control of her story. She pushed for more serious roles. She challenged directors. She even walked away from projects when she felt creatively stifled. But the shadow of control, first from her family, then from the men in her life, never fully left her. And that makes her final hours even more tragic. Because if what many now believe is true, if Natalie's death wasn't an accident, then her entire life was a slow-burning warning we refuse to read in time. The fear she lived with, the isolation she felt, the control she experienced behind the scenes. It was all there, but no one stopped it. And when the worst finally happened, the world accepted a convenient explanation. One that didn't ask hard questions, one that didn't risk reputations, one that kept powerful names out of the spotlight. For years, that version of the story held, until people started talking again. When the autopsy findings were revisited, when new eyewitnesses emerged, and when her own sister spoke up, people began to see the case for what it really was. Not a sad accident, but a chilling example of how silence can bury truth. Investigators now say the timeline from that night doesn't hold up. They say Wagner's refusal to speak, his instructions not to alert the Coast Guard, and the bruises found on Natalie's body all point to something more troubling. They say the evidence doesn't add up to a woman slipping and falling. It adds up to a woman trying to be heard and no one listening. And yet, no charges have ever been filed. Robert Wagner, now in his 90s, has lived the rest of his life as a free man. To this day, he denies any wrongdoing. Natalie's daughter, Natasha, has remained by his side, insisting he is not to blame. She calls him a devoted stepfather, a man unfairly accused, but others aren't convinced. Journalists, former detectives, even forensic analysts, many believe there is more to this case than anyone has dared to admit publicly. And what's perhaps most disturbing is how quickly the case was closed in the beginning. How authorities overlooked critical testimony. How a witness who heard cries for help from the water was never subpoenaed. How key questions were brushed aside for decades. Why would Natalie, who was terrified of the ocean at night, go out alone in a dinghy? Why was the dinghy's ignition off and the oars stowed when it was found? Why wait 4 hours to alert the Coast Guard? And why did so many of the people who knew what happened suddenly go quiet? These aren't small details. They're the cracks in a story that was never solid to begin with. And while the media loves a mystery, what Natalie's story really demands is justice. Justice doesn't always mean a trial or a headline. Sometimes it means simply telling the truth out loud. For Natalie, that might be the most powerful ending she never got to write herself. Because even in life, she often wasn't allowed to speak freely. As a young actress, she was told how to act, what to wear, who to be seen with. Later, after her alleged assault at age 16, a moment she shared only in whispers, she was told to stay quiet or risk her career. And when she tried to take back control, through her own production company, through marriage, through stepping away from Hollywood, it never lasted. Control was always just out of reach. Until finally, so was time. Now, over 4 decades later, the silence is breaking. Not just in Natalie's case, but across the industry. The old power structures are shifting. The fear that once kept victims quiet is giving way to something new, courage. It's too late to change how Natalie's story ended, but it's not too late to honor it. By listening to the voices that were once ignored, by demanding that unanswered questions actually get answers, by remembering that legends, no matter how bright, are still human. Natalie Wood wasn't just a tragic figure. She was a survivor of an industry that didn't always protect its brightest stars. She was a woman trying to redefine her identity in a world that preferred her in a box. And she was a mother, a sister, a daughter, and a woman who never stopped fighting for control of her own narrative. In the end, that's what makes her legacy so powerful. Not the mystery, but the truth behind it. Let us know in the comments what you think really happened that night on the Splendor. And if you want more stories of forgotten legends, unsolved mysteries, and Hollywood's hidden past, subscribe and join us for the next one.